lights are good. It's over there in that far left panel. They're okay. They're like
Yeah. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. All right, hello class. My name is Nick. Over here we have Steph, Tom, Anthony, and Vito. We are HR Stars, and today we will be speaking to all of you about recruiting and why it is so important and vital in human resources management. So first things first, what is recruiting? So recruiting is basically the process of finding and hiring the best qualified person, and whether that person is already inside the organization or outside of the organization. And something like this should be done in a timely and cost-effective manner. Now, like anything related to HR management, there should be a process involved. So the recruiting process should include elements such as analyzing the job requirements, attracting employees to that job, screening and selecting applicants, and then eventually hiring and integrating that new employee to the organization. So behind any process, there has to be someone putting that process into action. So that is where the actual recruiter comes into play. So some qualities that a good recruiter should possess are being a good listener, as well as being able to communicate information both clearly and efficiently, having great knowledge about the organization and what it has to offer. They should be very detail-oriented. They should know all information inside and out, and having the ability to sort through tons of data to find key needs versus key ones is important in the long run. So why do we recruit? So as previously mentioned, its main priority is to fulfill a vacant job position, whether that's someone incoming, new to the organization, external, or somebody already in the organization looking for a job promotion, internal, which we will touch on later on in our story. And there can be some consequences to some bad recruitment decisions. They can be very costly in both terms of time and money. You don't want to train somebody who doesn't want to be there in the first place, or someone who isn't exactly qualified to be there in the first place. So you need to start with some sort of plan of action. So that starts with drafting a comprehensive job specification that outlines major and minor responsibilities, skills required, past experience. Some other examples are grade and level of pay, start date of that job, whether that job is temporary or permanent, knowing any special requirements for that job, basically knowing everything inside and out to kind of ensure that you have a smooth transition and a smooth process. So basically, you want to come up with some sort of organized plan. So an example plan should include elements such as listing the positions you need to fill, along with complete job descriptions for each of those positions, examining the position and need and coming up with desirable traits for that set position. It's important to come up with an approach on how you want to advertise your job positioning. So how do you want to get your message out there, and how do you want to know that you're out there? Having potential supervisory managers with you in the actual interview process, it gives you a second opinion, as well as it gives that manager a first look at someone who they could be potentially looking over in the future. Post-interview, you want to keep all your notes along with the corresponding resumes, and you want to review them to make logical and intuitive decisions. So something like this should be kept simple. You only want to speak to people whom you deem worthy, which brings us to a strategy. You need to come up with some sort of strategies to address certain issues. You want to come up with strategic considerations to reach a common goal that you and your company can confidently stand behind, which ultimately is hiring the most qualified person for that said job. Now, you want to ask yourself some questions when you do this. Some example questions could be, what kind of methods am I going to use in my strategy? Who do I want to hire in the strategy? What qualifications are we looking for? Where are we finding these people? Which geographical locations? And why are we asking ourselves these questions? So an example strategy could include something like going to places other than job fairs to find potential employees, like the ones that Rowan hosts. Maybe go to local stores, restaurants, other places, interacting with their workers, kind of interacting with them, maybe offering interviews to someone who stands out to you. This is a good way to find diamonds in the rough, somebody who maybe never thought about applying to your company, but someone who you feel could excel there. Another good strategy could be publicizing referral incentives. Referrals are another excellent way to find the next great hire. You can offer financial rewards to someone who refers another person, and if that person gets hired, then they get compensated. That's a strong strategy because someone who recommends somebody else already knows what it takes to make it in that organization, and they can kind of see that in somebody else that they refer. Some experience that I have, I was a full-time summer intern at Enterprise. I work there part-time currently. I'll be full-time this summer again. I actually reached out to them through Prop Jobs, saw their job posting, sent HR an email, basically sold myself, And I went through a two-step interview process. I had one interview here on campus with someone from the HR department, and then I had one more interview at the office I'm currently working at with two major managers, and they also initiate the referral bonuses. So say I refer somebody in this class, then I will get compensated, and it's actually a pretty good amount of money. And now I'm going to hand it over to Steph, who will be talking about the law and legal issues.
Hello, so I'm Steph, and I'll be talking about the different type of laws that need to be followed, the EEOC, and other various things that should be mentioned. Okay, when it comes to recruiting, there are certain federal anti-discrimination laws that need to be followed. A company must be aware of these rules and follow and comply with them, and if you have at least 15 employees or 20 with the age discrimination law. The Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 makes it illegal to discriminate against someone on the basis of their color, race, national origin, religion, and sex. Title V actually led to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They, in fact, are located in Washington, D.C., and they're responsible for enforcing all of the federal anti-discrimination laws that you need to focus on during the recruiting process. EEOC, for short, also has the authority to investigate charges made against a company. They can either settle it between themselves, or they can either take it to court if it's actually more serious. EEOC also provides leadership and guidance of federal agencies. Now, the Equal Pay Act of 1963 makes it illegal to discriminate and give different wages to either men and women even if they have equal work and they're working in the same workplace. So if they have the same job, do the same thing, they get paid the same. The Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1967 makes it illegal to discriminate against a qualified person with a disability in the private sector and in both state and local governments. Employers also must make it reliable for them to reasonably accommodate them during this process. The Uniform Services Employment and Reemployment Act has many parts to it, but in general, it basically protects their civilian jobs and the benefits for veterans and reserve components. That means if they go on deployment, their job is still there for them. The Pregnancy Discrimination Act amends parts of Title VII, which makes it illegal to discriminate a woman based on her pregnancy, childbirth, or any medical conditions that have to do with her pregnancy or childbirth. The Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008, which is very new, you cannot discriminate against an employee or applicant based on their genetic info, and that goes with genetic test or their family member's genetic test. Be aware of employment tests and research. Does the position you're hiring for require it? If it does, you must comply with the EEOC guidelines in order to avoid possible lawsuits that can come with that. Companies nowadays use social media to do background checks on possible candidates, but you must be careful about that because information that could be made public, such as their religion or their birthday, could be used against the company in later lawsuits if they decide not to hire based on that. Ensure your interviews are objective and job-related. So you can't ask anything that isn't about the job itself. And then determine if your organization needs an affirmative action plan which ensures the equal employment opportunity. To create a more diverse environment, it's important for employers to recruit and advance qualified minorities, women, persons with disabilities, and covered veterans. Under these EEO laws, it is illegal to retaliate against anyone who makes a complaint against its company. And there are also prohibited policies, so during the recruiting process, make sure you don't make any preferences or display any preferences on what type of person you want. These laws can be found on the EEOC website. You can find all of them. The U.S. Department of Labor, I put up there because of the Uniform Services Act. I had the pleasure of interning at the Vineland plant for Rich Products Incorporated, the Casa de Portage plant. They're a family-owned business that has now grown into an international multi-billion-dollar company. The Casa de Portage plant has over 200 employees, so all the EEO and the DOL laws apply to them. One of the rules is that employees must be aware of its rights and posters must be posted out throughout the entire company. There are several boards in the main office where the non-union associates work and several more boards in the plant where the union associates work. So one of my tasks was to update and organize these boards in order for employees to know their rights and see them, and it had in both English and Spanish. Up next, I'll be introducing Tom, and he'll be talking about screening and background checks.
How you guys doing tonight? My name is Tom. I'll be talking about screening and background checks during the recruitment process. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what is job screening. The process of job screening is filtering out the unqualified candidates for a given job position during the recruitment stage. It's very important, so you really get to narrow down the turnover on certain employees, and you reduce the amount of time wasted on unqualified employees. So the purpose of screening. The purpose of screening is to reduce the pool of candidates. Ideally, you want to have a small group of candidates to go through it during your screening stage because it's a long process. In order to achieve this goal, you really need to have the set qualifications for the job given, so you could really make sure each candidate meets that certain standard. The different steps of the screening process are resume, phone interview, selection test, in-person interview, reference check, background check, drug test, and the final begins the selection test. So to start off, the first one is the resume. On average, a recent survey went out that companies look at resumes for an average of 6 seconds. They focus on your name, education, previous work, how long you worked there, and the position you worked there. So it's very prominent to make sure you have that, as well as clean and organized. Another thing going along with resumes, technologies continue to change. So new companies are now beginning to have programs where they upload their resumes and they look for keywords, and depending if they have the keywords on their resume, they will go to one side or the other. If it's the good side, then it will go one way, and then if the bad side, it will go to the other side. So you have to make sure that you have the right words on it. The next step is phone interview. Phone interview is very straightforward. They ask very straightforward questions. They make sure of who you are. They want to make sure they're getting someone that they're not on their resume. So you really need to, they get the straightforward job qualifications on that. Following that is selection test. Selection tests more and more companies are starting to do. It's very important that they're consistent through the candidates, so the time and content on it really needs to be relevant through all the candidates, so there's no advantages between different people. Different testing methods are aptitude, personality, abilities, honesty, and motivation. So for example, for administrative assistant is going to be doing a keyboard test. They should not be doing anything, a test where they're doing anything lifting like that, so it needs to be relative to that given job. The next is the in-person interview. Personal interview is they want to focus on how they're going to perform in the workplace. You want to focus on what's on their resume or how they did on selection test. You want to see what their work ethic is going to be in the workplace and how they're going to get their work done, and make sure they'll be able to get it done on time. Following that, there's two different kinds of interviews. There's the structured and the situational. Structured is where the interviewer has a set list of questions where they ask every interviewee, and they make sure they ask everyone the same question. And the situational is where they give the interviewee different situations and make sure and see how they adapt to each one. Ideally, you want a little bit of both. Reference checks are becoming harder and harder now because of recent lawsuits to previous employers because they can't talk about past employers. Here are some of the surveys I found. 95% of the students lied, saying they were willing to lie to get a job, and 41 said they already have done so. As far as reference checks, defamation is the act of harming the reputation of another by making a false statement to a third person, and negligence is the failure to exercise a standard of care that a reasonably prudent person would have exercised in the same situation. So these are some of the common lawsuits that previous employers and interviewees are facing because they're just giving out false information. Background checks are becoming more and more popular because past employees can't release information. According to a SHRM survey recently, 99% of employers are conducting surveys as compared to 10 years ago where it was only 66%. Drug tests. Drug tests vary on the job. Certain drug tests are earlier in the screening process, certain are later, some don't have it at all. As far as government jobs, all government jobs are required to have a drug test. So it really varies on what kind of job you're going for if you have a drug test. The selection process is the last step of the screening process. This is where HR and management decide on who they really want to hire and who they're going to reach out to give that final job. As far as new and you, I did my internship this summer at Smash